Yo, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Unfucking Your CX. I am your host. You all know that, Zack Hamilton. But you're really curious and tuning in today because you love to hear one who's in the hot seat and then to learn from them. What's that one specific topic that needs to get unfucked? And so I am so excited. When I learned about this specific topic, I actually got really, really, really giddy. I think it is something that us as CX leaders and practitioners really need to understand, and we need to implement it in our own CX strategies. So, with that, Friederike, welcome to the hot seat.
Thank you, Zach. Happy to be here.
I just absolutely have loved just engaging with you on LinkedIn. I think you bring this whole new perspective, should I say, to the CX sport, but just to the CX discipline. And so before we get into our conversation, I always like to just set the scene. Where are we having this just organic conversation? Is it, at your favorite coffee shop? Is it at your favorite restaurant? I've taken a walk with some folks during the podcast, and it's also been one of their favorite vacation destinations. So, where are we at today?
Ooh. Well, it's Wednesday afternoon, 4 p.m. local time here in the Netherlands. And tomorrow is going to be a public holiday, so it's going to be a long weekend for us. So it feels like Friday afternoon already. So I would normally say, let's go to a fancy cocktail bar. I'm a huge fan of cocktails. However, as I am 6 months pregnant right now, that's not the best idea, probably. And I know you have mocktails and everything, but that's kind of boring. Takes away the whole
Yes.
experience, don't you think? So I would say let's go for a long walk. I think it's nice to have a conversation during a long walk, clear our heads, our
Yeah.
thoughts. So yeah,
Very cool. Well, congratulations too, by the way.
thank you.
6 months. What a joy, the next couple of months will bring to your life. But I love the walk. I'm with you. I started this practice during COVID where because we were on our screens so much, I would have all of my one-to-ones with my direct reports as what I called a walk and talk. So it was if you wanted to share, PowerPoint slides over, you had to do it the night before so that, I could digest them. And then for 30 minutes, we would just have a natural conversation walking. I'm curious, like, where did this all start for you? Have you always been a walker or did it just start from somewhere?
I think I've always been a walker. I grew up on a farm in Germany close to the woods, so we used to be outside all the time. But just like you, during COVID, I did the same thing with my team. Just have this weekly walk to see each other at least, to get out. So yeah, it started very early, but it intensified during COVID. Are you still
Yeah.
doing that, the walks, or did you stop
Um,
after COVID?
no, I do. So I know like one of the former CEOs that I worked with at a company, that I've worked with now for a couple different companies, we've just ingrained it into our one-to-ones where we're walking. If we're together, so let's say we're at an event or at one of the home offices together, we will actually just meet up and do kind of run club, and we'll just have that one-on-one kind of while we're running. And I try and put that into play at least once or twice a day of what calls can I take that I don't have to be on camera.
Hmm.
I can still contribute, I can still listen, I can still add into the conversation, but just get up from behind your desk and go for a walk.
Yeah, and your input might even get better because I think it's scientifically proven that your brain is more active and you get better ideas while you're moving.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, Frederique, I know that you have an extensive background when it comes to business and customer experience. And when you hit me with this topic about here's the one thing that just makes me cringe and I want to unfuck it, it actually made me reflect in my own kind of CX leadership and practitioner and how am I thinking about this? So tell our listeners, what is that one topic that when you hear, you just cringe and you want to bring a new perspective and unfuck it today?
Yes, thanks for the opportunity. What's really annoying me, partly because I think I've done it myself a few years ago when I started, is CX professionals who want to solve everything, who get involved in everything, every little project, every little detail, who want to take control of everything. and who just drown in the sea of projects and sea of small things they want to do. And they end up getting nothing done because they start 1,000 things and they don't contribute to the business at all because they don't finish anything.
Yes, look, I've done it myself. I mean, it takes me back to, when you're running when you have your VOC program, right? And you're collecting all of the insights from your customers and you see that dashboard of all the frictions, like it's hard not to want to go fix all of them. And I'm guilty myself where I tried to go fix them all and we ended up not fixing any of them. I mean, yes, we rolled out maybe some new deployments or whatever, but they weren't our best ability. So why do you think CX leaders get in this trap of, I need to go solve everything?
I think there are two main reasons. The first one being that they are really enthusiastic. They burn for customer experience. They want to solve problems. And that's why they just get involved in everything, just with the best intentions, because they want to save the world and make it a better place, make customers happy. And I think that the second one is that customer experience is fucking hard, right? It's complex. It's really complicated. And if you look at the customer journey, there is like everything in there. So
Yeah.
from the product to the delivery, the web shop, customer service, the back end, like everything is customer experience. So it's so easy to get lost in this huge world that the customer journey entails.
I think that's such a great perspective, right? When you think about why it's so fucking hard. It's because it is, especially if you're solving for the right things, like the highest frictions are going to return the most business impact. They're cross-functional. But I think the one thing that we always lose sight of is the change management involved
Mm-hmm.
with rolling out these significant changes. Friederike, I'm curious in your mind and your experience, CX leaders struggle um, to prove the value of their strategy
Mm-hmm.
every year, right? And we're seeing it now. We're seeing, you know, businesses and brands and companies. There's still those macroeconomic pressures that are happening right now. There's that unknown of what's going to be here in 6 to 12 months. And so they're still going through like a lot of just cost efficiencies.
Yep.
And so I don't know about you, but I see a lot of LinkedIn leaders and practitioners who are very damn good at their jobs, but now they're open to work. So do you think part of this is why we try and take on so much is because it is about proving our value?
Absolutely. I think the pressure is increasing, and that's why we are trying so hard. I can also imagine that, at least for me personally, it's difficult to disappoint my own leadership team, for example. You know, if they have all these expectations and they think that they can improve NPS by 20 points in 1 year, it's really hard to stand up to them and to say, guys, I love your ambition, but let's be realistic here. This is what we can do. You know, you don't want to disappoint them. You want to use their enthusiasm, and you want to prove what your worth is. And that's how you get into this trap of maybe promising too much or starting too much.
Yeah, you're so spot on there. I mean, I just shared that story with you where they wanted to increase their NPS by 18 points this year, and I'm
Yeah.
like, do you understand how hard it is just to improve 1 point? If you're doing it right, if you're truly implementing the NPS system, not
Mm-hmm.
just the score, but the system, do you know how hard it is? Like, it's not easy. And I think that's where I think part of this just comes as growth as a leader,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Of really understanding what it takes to deliver effectively into the business.
Agree. And I think it also really depends on the company culture because, like, as a customer experience coach, I get a glimpse of lots of different cultures behind the scenes of customer experience. And what I see that, for example, in retail, often they are really focused on short-term results and they live from one quarter to the next, and they want results within one quarter. They don't have the patience to wait for 2 years maybe to get the first results. Whereas if you have a company with a culture that is more focused on the long term, the sustainability of the business results, then it's easier because you can more easily explain that it takes time to improve customer experience, that so many things are involved to improve the customer journey, for example. So it also really depends on the kind of company that you work for, I guess. Do you recognize that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really great point because, some of my feedback to CX practitioners lately has been, look, I see it in your earnings calls. Your CEO is out here fighting for her life or his life, right? Quarter to quarter. And yet you're trying to deliver this 1 to 2 year transformational project. Like, they're never going to say yes to that. Like, you have to understand, like, to your point, you have to understand where your company is right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, Friederike, that really brings us to our 3 player tips. So if you really think about, your topic of trying to do too much and trying to be involved in everything, and it really is about kind of this minimalism CX, what's that first player tip on how to shift your mindset from I'm trying to be that CX leader who's trying to do it all and accomplish all
Mm-hmm.
to I'm really going to focus just on what's most meaningful to the business?
Yeah, I think it all starts with awareness, obviously. You first need to see everything that you're involved in, maybe make a list of all the projects that you're currently working on. I'm a huge fan of Essentialism. There's this great book by Greg McEwen about Essentialism. And he basically says you should do less, but better. And whereas minimalism really focuses on just doing less as a goal itself, so decluttering, having less stuff, whatever. Essentialism is more about focusing on what really matters most. So if you have this whole list of your projects, maybe dive deeper into it and see, okay, what really adds value to the business right now? What is something that is relevant within the business right now? What's a topic that is relevant to the business? So start there and then cut the rest.
I love this. And I'll say why I love this too is here lately I've been on some coaching calls with some CX leaders and they're just burnt out. And they're questioning, like, is CX really for me? And I can empathize with that because I've had that same question where I've been burnt out. It's like, man, is this really what I want to do? And then to your part, as you start to take inventory of everything that you're trying to accomplish, ultimately, if you have this really big list and it's not meaningful work, and then you don't get anything accomplished because you're trying to achieve this like long list, well, yeah, you're going to feel burnout. You're going to be tired. You're going to question, can I really do this job? So I love this like essentialism element to it. What's player tip number 2?
Player tip number 2 would be something to help you make these choices. So if you have all of these projects and you need to kill your darlings, you need to focus on where to start. Obviously, you want to look at business impacts, but what I also would advise is to go where the energy flows. Within your company, you know who your sponsors are, you know who is supporting you. So instead of, flogging a dead horse, start with the projects that give you energy yourself, but also that really tickles something within the organization where there's already something going on, some energy, and start there.
That's such a fantastic one because I think so many times CS leaders fight against the energy of the organization,
Yes. Yeah.
where you have to understand what are the most 3 to 5 strategic initiatives that your CEO is trying to accomplish, and then really get behind those and prove, here's how I can build a customer-centric system around those.
Mm-hmm.
And I also love the other one of who do you have social capital with inside of your organization?
Yeah, absolutely. And you don't want to become this police officer, who is just complaining about everything and who is saying you're doing this wrong or this should be different. That doesn't help anyone. And it's not fun to do that either.
No, I love how you're talking about the police officer too, because I was talking to a CEO or I'm sorry, a VP last week who said she feels like her team has just become kind of police officers of
Mm-hmm.
NPS. And so the CEO every month is just like, hey, give me a list of basically the top offenders where NPS decreased and I'll go hold them accountable. And she's like, we've lost all of our internal credibility and influence because it's now become a compliance report versus a customer sentiment and driving the business report.
That's the last thing you want, right? That's like the
Yeah.
worst case scenario.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, Friederike, what's the 3rd player tip?
Yeah. The third one, I actually stole that from MIT Sloan Management Review. I read an article on there, I think it was 3 years ago, right after COVID. And they suggested the use of a killer KPI. So instead of having, I don't know, like 5, 10, maybe even 15 KPIs that you're focusing on at the same time, choose one killer KPI, maybe for 1 quarter, for example. Get everyone on board. Also involve your team in choosing what the killer KPI should be. And then do everything to improve this one KPI. Of course, you need to monitor the rest and you need to check that, well, this one KPI is hopefully going up, the rest isn't like going down. But
Yeah.
that gives you a lot of focus. So choose one theme, one KPI, one topic per quarter,
Mm.
and just full focus 100%. Do that. Communicate about that, involve everyone in that, so that everyone knows what direction you're heading into and what you want to achieve that quarter. And that also helps you with this quarter to quarter focus, right? Because sometimes you have to step on this quarterly train and you have to speak the same language as the organization. And I think that can really help you to achieve that.
Yeah, and let me do a heat check here too, by the way, for all
Mm-hmm.
of our listeners. That killer KPI should not be MPS, CSAT, OSAT, or it should be what is meaningful to the business. So something
Yes.
like reduce customer churn, right? And so if you think about Frederique, like, hey, this quarter we're going to focus on all of our customers that have churned. Let's go look at what's been their feedback. Let's have conversations with them. Let's identify the frictions and the leaky buckets, and then let's work cross-functionally with the department leaders to say, okay, let's redesign this specific experience or whatever that may be. I just wanted to be cautious of it's not around a vanity metric, it's around a business metric. And then ultimately at the end of the quarter, now you're like, hey, look, we found these 4 frictions. We worked cross functionally to deploy at, X, Y, and Z. You may not get all 4 of them complete. However, even if we just did these 2 deployments, we're now seeing a 10% decrease in customer churn, whatever that may be. That's the type of game you're talking about.
Yes, I love that. Good addition. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's been an absolutely amazing conversation. I wish we could keep you in the hot seat longer, but of course, we also love these kind of short, just kind of quick conversations. So, one, don't be a stranger, come back to the hot seat. But I know our listeners are going to get an immense amount of value out of this. Where can they continue the conversation with you at?
I think LinkedIn is the best place to connect for sure.
It's become such a great place, right?
Yeah.
Just to connect, get involved with the conversation. For the rest of our listeners, what I'm so excited about is as Friederike and I were preparing for this podcast, we wanted to issue a joint essentialism challenge. And so, what we want to challenge each and every one of you is take that kind of spot check of every every initiative that you have going on and really decide what are the 2 to 3 most important to your organization. And we want you just to focus on those. What's your commitment? How are you going to commit to doing that? Or it could be, hey, I'm going to have a commitment this quarter for player tip number 3, where we just focus on one business kind of KPI. So here's the deal. Here's the challenge. All you have to do is send Friederike a DM with what your challenge, what your commitment's going to be. What's the challenge? You'll find her link in the newsletter, so you could just email it to her directly. And everyone who sends her, this is your commitment, she's going to return the favor and give you 3 free ebooks. Amazing, Friederike. Thank you so much.
You're
With
very
that,
welcome.
everyone, I cannot wait to see what your commitments are. You can even just shout them out in the comments if you want. That would be even better just to get the conversation going. With that, Friederike, again, thank you so much for coming on. Looking forward to having you back. And with everyone else, we'll talk to you next time.
See you next time.